Minasan, konnichiwa, Ali desu. Hi everyone, my name is Ali. Welcome or welcome back to the channel. Today we're doing a very exciting video in which I'm going to show you guys how I have been using Notion to track my language learning. Let's go! This video comes at a right timing because I'm actually going to transfer some of my tracking onto another website very soon, and actually that will be the topic of another video on the channel. But for today, what we're going to cover is really everything that I've been tracking on Notion and how I've been tracking that on Notion, what was my reasoning behind it. So first off, before I even tell you anything about my Notion, just one word about Notion, because I'm sure some people watching this have never used Notion or have never even heard of it. Notion is essentially a productivity tool, accessible as a website but also as an application, so you can have it locally on your computer, your tablet, your smartphone. It is as customizable a tool as you want it to be. You can customize absolutely everything on there, or you can use pre-designed templates on pages that you create within your own Notion website. Essentially, it acts as a personal website. That's how I like to refer to it. The interface that I envision in my head onto an external website, if that makes sense. A lot of people have been calling it their second brain. I can definitely understand why. I've tried a lot of things. I have watched a lot of tutorials on Notion, as I'm sure a lot of you guys have also done if you have tried using Notion, because at first sight it's quite an opaque website and there is a learning curve there before you can actually use it to its full advantage and in a customized way that will be really suitable to you and how you want to use it. So I've been there myself. This video, however, is not a tutorial per se, because I'm not a Notion expert in any way, shape or form, so I'm only going to share with you really how I have been using Notion. The way I have been using it for years is to act as my task management system. So all of my to-do list, for example, are all digitalized on Notion. I also use it as my project management tool. So I have all of my project boards on there for every single project I'm working on at the moment, whether it be for work or for personal purposes, in fact. So any project that I want to keep track of, I do it on Notion. I also use it as my goals management tool, so I track my goals with it, my main goals, sub-goals, and sub-sub goals. All of that is tracked on Notion on different project boards and different trackers. And to be honest with you, it has elevated my system, my productivity system, so much in the past few years that I don't even remember how I was managing things before starting to use Notion. And I think, like I said, it's the same for a lot of people. Currently, last time I checked, Notion has 100 million users around the world. So it's just to tell you how useful this tool is. Otherwise, I don't think you would have this amount of users, to be honest with you. So definitely, I've been loving using Notion, and it only made sense for me to actually introduce my language learning system and language learning productivity system into my Notion in some way, which I've done since actually the year 2022. Before that, I was doing everything on paper, and from the year 2022, I really started to, introduce some trackers here and there for my language learning. Since then, I've actually optimized them all the way to the trackers that I'm about to show you today. First off, here is what I track and what I don't track on Notion for my language learning. The first thing I track are my yearly language goals since 2022. And before that, I was using paper and I was writing everything inside of my language study planner every year. So that's the first thing I'm tracking with Notion. The second thing is the tracking of all of the language learning resources I use, including some immersion resources, which I use systematically, like in a systematic way. And so because I use them this way, they become study resources, but essentially they are immersion resources. I hope that makes sense.
My language learning resources were also something I was tracking on paper previously. I had created trackers on paper inside of my language planners in the past, and they were very useful, but essentially the way I have been tracking things on Notion is an improved way compared to how I was doing things on paper. And of course, it's much more convenient to do it digitally. And so that's the main reason why I started doing it on Notion. And finally, the last thing I will show you today is my reading log, because I track all of the reading that I do in my languages, in all of my languages, including my native language and in English as well. And because my reading immersion practice is very, very important in my language learning routine, I really wanted to show that to you guys today in this video, because definitely my reading log is part of my Notion system that I use for language learning. Even though it's not part of my language learning dashboard, it's a separate tracker. All right. So if you followed me, guys, you would have noticed that there are two other things that I don't track with my Notion then, and that I track separately. And these are my language study notes. I do not use Notion as a note-taking system for my language learning. I do everything on paper whenever I need to take notes, so I have different notebooks for that. And then the second thing I don't use Notion for is to track my monthly and weekly study goals for language learning. As you know, I use my study planners to do that. Alright guys, so let's first start with my language learning dashboard. Here is my language learning dashboard, and actually it is one page on which I have linked all of the other pages and trackers that I use for my language learning, except my reading log. So my reading log is outside of this page, but essentially this page is really my languages dashboard, and I put everything on there related to my language learning. Starting with my yearly goals, as you would have noticed, this project table here is basically a board view of my 2024 language goals broader database, which is stored elsewhere in my Notion. And this one is a linked view of this database, showing only my language learning goals and showing in the form of cards the goals that I have per language for the year 2024. So in this case, Japanese, Chinese, and Russian. Right below this, we have a call-out block called 2024 goals, and this is basically the prioritization order I give to my languages. So Japanese is the first priority, Mandarin Chinese the second, and Russian the third priority. And then right underneath, we have 5 different sections, 3 for each of the languages that I'm studying at the moment, except for Russian. As you guys know, I'm taking a break with Russian, but I still have it here on this page. And then I have 2 more categories there, my exams category for language exams. So I only have a very simple page here, which I won't show you, about the language examinations I take. And because I don't take many, it only has like 2 bullet points basically. And then a databases category, which has the 2 databases that I use mostly for this page. So those databases is the same. I won't show them to you because it's not interesting. They're really only like background tables that I put together in the background of this page just to regroup tasks somewhere and to be then part of my project boards. So that's pretty much it for my language learning dashboard. As you can see, it's pretty simple. And now I'm going to click on my Japanese page here, and this is my Japanese language learning dashboard. On this dashboard, we first have a few call-out sections here, as you can see. And then below this, we have the full table of my Japanese study resources for the year 2024. So first off, very quickly, here what you can see is a call-out of the goals that I have with Japanese studying. This is only a space for me to take some notes on my goals with the language. So I have the exact same for Chinese and Russian. And then here I have a call out for the other pages that are inside this page. So I have the database for the tracker that you see below here, the 2024 Japanese resources. I have my previous database for the resources that I used last year. Then I have the database that I used before that, so from 2022. In there, I basically recapped all of the resources that I used for the preparation for the GLPT N1. And I won't show you this page because actually that will be the topic of another video on the channel. And then I have another page here for my notes on Keigo and business Japanese. And this is the only page where I've taken notes actually, and that I want to keep because in there there's just a table of a few expressions that I want to remember. Alright, and then I have a very simple bullet point list here of the exams and certifications that are available in Japanese. Next up, we have my language learning resource tracker. And so what I will show you in this tracker, you can basically apply to my other languages as well, because I have the exact same kind of tracker. Let me show you. For Chinese, right here, Chinese resources, and for Russian, right here, my Russian resources. So really I will only show you actually the fullest tracker because obviously since Japanese is my first priority language, I'm using way more resources than in my other languages. So this is basically the best one for me to show you. So first of all, what you must understand about this tracker is that it is recapping absolutely all the resources that I use for Japanese in 2024, including the resources that I want to use next as well. And so here, this is the same database. So this is a second tab in this linked view of the database, but in a table format, much like an Excel table, an Excel sheet. And it has a few categories and we're going to go through each one, even though it's quite self-explanatory. But first off, for each resource, I obviously have the name of the resource, which acts as the title of the page per resource. Then I have the cover of the resource, so the logo of the app or profile picture of the YouTube channel, that kind of thing. The banner of the YouTube channel, so some kind of picture representing it. Then I have the level of the resource, so you can see I have a few options there. Then I have the goal of the resource, so to which of my goal this resource is applying. So basically, you know, depending on the goals that I'm working on, I will just assign a resource to each goal. Then I have the start date, the date on which I started using the resource, then the date on which I stopped using the resource and I finished the resource. Then we have a tick box here for whether or not I bought the resource already. Then we have a tag category, so what kind of resource is it? Also very useful. Then we have the status category. You see I have a few different options there. I have a to-do option, so when I have a few resources that I want to cover next, then I will use this status here. I have an on hiatus progress type of status as well, when I just take a break with a resource, when I just stop using it. I have an in-use one. Reference one. Reference is when I basically completed using a resource, but I want to keep it as a reference because I want to reference it later. So just as the name suggests. So I will keep it as reference in my table here. And then the finished status, which is, you know, once I'm completely done with the resource, then I will mark it as finished. And then the last few columns there, the last few categories are essentially for tracking of the scores I give to each of my resources, and then which I share with you guys on my Instagram actually, to tell you whether or not I like the resource. And then other than that, we also have my progress status here for each resource, and I'm using the numbers from this current column here and this last page column here. So basically based on the last page and the current page I'm on, or percentage I'm on, it will calculate the percentage of progress, the completion rate I am at. You can do this very easily yourself if you want to recreate this. Just watch a tutorial online about the progress bars inside of Notion, and I'm sure you will find lots of very good explanations about that, just like I did. Alright, so now that I've explained that to you guys, we're going to go back to the board view of this database, and now I hope that you can understand better how to read this. We're going to start from the far left here, so I have these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 resources here that I call reference resources. So I just keep them on the side here. They're always there. I do go back to them from time to time. Then we have the next up category. So I have 17 resources here that I want to use next. Definitely a lot. I will do my best to cover everything, but yeah, you can have a peek at what I'm about to use next for Japanese. I have 2 resources on hiatus. I have 3 resources in use, even though, to be honest with you, this one I'm going to place it in the hiatus category because actually I'm not really using it at the moment. It's right there beside me, but actually I'm not using it. So yeah, I have 2 resources in use at the moment. And then this year I have finished 3 resources, these 3. And that's pretty much it. That's how you read it. And as you saw, I can drag any resource from one column to another. Very useful type of board here. One last thing maybe to tell you guys is that you can actually click on each of the cards there, also put them in full screen, in fact, and you can reference each of the categories that we've just seen in the table and just modify everything, anything that you want to modify, like this. Once I'll be done with this resource, I will mark it as finished here. I will put in the finish date. I will then score it, and then that's it. That's pretty much it. I'll just keep it there. That will help me remember everything that I have used in 2024. Alright, and finally guys, the last tracker I will show you today is my reading log. The reading log I have on my Notion is basically regrouping all of the books, almost, that I have read since 2020 in all of my languages, excluding some of the books that I have read in French and English since 2020, because I think I've only started using my Notion tracker for these from 2023, so last year. And before that, I was using Goodreads, and I was also using Goodreads for my first Japanese books read. However, it was not practical at all to use Goodreads, so this is why I went onto paper first to track my Japanese books read, and then after that, because that wasn't practical either, I moved onto Notion finally. Right, so now that you have the background, here is the full table of my reading log. So this is really the complete list of all of the books I have in there in all languages. You can see that, if you look at this column here, the language column, I mostly read in Japanese. You kind of only see the Japan flag right here. That's the full table here, but now let me show you the page that I use pretty much every single day, since I update this tracker every single day. Here it is. So here is the page that I mostly use, and it is my reading log for this year. So you can see it is filtered down to the year 2024 for the books I read this year only. Then mostly in Japanese and Chinese, because at the moment I'm focusing on these 2 languages. And then we have in the status here the TBR books, the ones that are being read. And then I will tick this box here to show the ones that I have completed this year as well. In chronological order, you see here on this page all of the books that I have read this year, and we are at 77 books so far, the date I am filming this today. Then they're also sorted by status. So we have the red one first, then the ones that I'm currently reading, and then we have the ones that I want to read next. That's pretty much it. That's what I wanted to show you on this page. Now I'm going to show you how I create an entry in there, just to show you guys how this works if you ever want to recreate this yourself. Alright, so on my TBR right now, I have the book Kokoro by Natsume Soseki, and I'm going to create the entry for this book in my table here. So I'm going to click on new. It opens a new page, and I'm going to write down the title of the book right here, the author right here. That's my soseki. Then I'm gonna click on cover, add a file, upload the file. The type is fiction, genre is novel, target audience I think is universal. Haven't read it yet, so I don't know. The status is indeed to be read. The date started, I can't put anything yet. I don't know how many pages the book has, so I can't enter the number here for the target. So the target being the last page of the book. And then while I'm reading it, I update the current page I'm on so that it gives me my percentage of progress here. Once I'll be done with the book, I will click here to enter the finish date. The year read will, I hope, be 2024. And then here we have a category for review. So here are my review options. I have a tick box for notes, and then for the year count and the JP ever, let me show you what this means. The year count you can find here. The year count is basically simply a countdown of all the books that I read during the year, over 1 year. So in this case, this one was the first book I read in 2024. And then JP ever is for Japanese ever, in the sense of the countdown of all the books that I read in Japanese. And so the first one I read in 2024 was my 115th book read in Japanese. So that's pretty much it. I hope it makes sense here. This is basically the recap of all the books that I have read in 2024. And this tab here only shows their covers. I have the same kind of board for the year 2023 right here. I also have this for the year 2022. Then 2021 and 2020. And then the reading stats here, there's nothing to see here. It was the page that I used to create the visuals that I showed you in my Japanese reading stats video, which I uploaded on the channel a few weeks ago. Alright, so guys, we're done. I've shown you all of the trackers that I have currently on my Notion related to my language learning, and I think it's time to wrap up the video.
Alright guys, and it's on that note that I will leave you for today. I hope that this video was useful and insightful. If you have any questions or comments that you want to leave me, please don't hesitate and talk to me in the comment section. I'm always happy to read your comments. And as for me, I will see you in my next video on the channel. Bye bye! Matane!
Simple, simple, simple.